Mike's Daily Podcast.
Mike's Daily Podcast is what this is. Hi.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Thank you for listening to this podcast show that's been going on for over 10 years. It's been awesome. It's been great. It's episode 2363. Yay, 2363. I'm writing with a red pen because that's the only thing I can find. That's why men in general do podcasts by themselves.
Mike's Daily Podcast.
Or this guy does anyway. Sometimes. Yeah, most of the time. Occasionally.
Mike's
Oh, wait, we do have
Daily
people who visit.
Podcast.
At the end when we're outside.
Yeah.
Of Cafe Anyway, somewhere in Podcastro Valley. Today, Podcastro Valley 10. The last place on earth. Thank you for listening to the show. 2363 is the FF episode. Tell all your friends. You know why? Because nobody's going to find out about this podcast. I was having a lengthy discussion with my friend Masa about podcasts in general and about how, in general, people really only listen to podcasts that are produced and done by very large conglomerates of some kind. And I'll say, for example, NPR. They got a lot of podcasts. They pretty much rule the podcast roost. Then there are some other organizations like Slate, ESPN. You've got your big radio station owners trying to take over the podcast world. And it makes sense because radio does, it's audio. It's what this is, basically, is a type of radio. But it's recorded, and you're playing it back not on a radio, but on some kind of podcast playing device, or app, or website. That's why at my website, I've got several ways to listen to this podcast, because there are several different...
And here's today's podcast picture.
Platforms. So that was what we were talking about, because we have exciting discussions like that, and that a lot of podcasts you don't find out about. And kudos to you for finding this one, because there's really no way to discover podcasts in this world, unless it's on the radio first. Oh, I know, Basil, I'm upset too. It makes me so... Yes, is what it does. That's how I feel about it. You know, he and I agreed often about podcasts. He was on a couple of my podcasts. Well, he was sitting across from me as I did some of my podcasts. And now he is immortalized on my podcast, the late great Basil the Boxer. I think I will go with a podcast picture from Fremont the other day. We had a beautiful sunset, and I just happened to catch it. You can see it at mikesdailypodcast.com. Yesterday's podcast was from Bolinas, and I will share a little secret with you. It actually wasn't yesterday that I shared that picture. It was today, earlier today. Some of you will be getting this podcast in your feed on Sunday, but I am recording this on Saturday because I had the time, and I felt guilty. Because all last week I was busy with stuff and I didn't get a chance to do the podcast except for on Monday. So I'm trying to make this show daily again. But chime in about if you care about that or not at 336MM Daily. 3 + 3 = 6. MM as in Mike Matthews. Daily as in what this podcast tries to be, but gets interrupted. You know how that is. Teen Vogue had this article. January 6th insurrection. 1 year later, families are still divided. A week before his dad joined the crowd that stormed the U.S. Capitol, Jackson Reffitt called the FBI. His dad had been talking about doing something big, and Jackson was worried about what that meant. Either way, the 19-year-old wanted the weight off his shoulders. A few days after alerting the FBI to his father's statements, Jackson checked his family group chat and found out his dad was at the Capitol insurrection. In text messages obtained by Teen Vogue, Jackson's younger sister wrote, "Dad, please be safe. You know you are risking not only your business, but your life too." And because he's a teen, he wrote, "You're as you are." Jackson's dad, Guy Reffitt, wrote back, I have no intentions on throwing it away. I love all of you with all my heart. And those were in caps. The word all. This is for our country and for all of you and your kids. God bless us one and all. Oh, that's very Tiny Timish. Guy Reffitt is one of an estimated 710 people facing federal charges for swarming the U.S. Capitol last year in an apparent attempt to overthrow the election that resulted in Joseph Biden being the 46th president of the U.S., urged on by Donald Trump's insidious lies about election fraud. Well, now we're getting into a little more political bent. Some of you may not want to continue reading, but it's true that there was some very nasty day a year ago, January 6th. And as I watched, I was freaking out. I know we like to revise it. Some of us do and say, oh no, it was just a bunch of like tourists showing up to the Capitol. That's all it was. Who said that? Was that Ted Cruz? Who said that? I heard that clip today as I was listening to On the Media. And that podcast can be rather interesting. I think that's put on by WNYC, who I think the voice guy for WNYC radio is the same guy that does Snap Judgment. That podcast got popular. And I saw that guy in person. I forget his name. He was hosting a podcast awards that Stitcher was putting on in San Francisco at the Chapel. And he said something to the effect of, a year ago, if someone asked you what a podcast was, that was unusual. But what did he say? That, like, because podcasting at that point, and this was like 10 years ago. Was that when I saw this thing? I think maybe it was a little less than, like maybe 8 or 7 years ago. I went to this award show, and he was saying at that point that a year earlier podcasts were not popular, but now they were starting to get popular. And here we are 7 or 8 years on, and yes, people are tuning in, although they're not discovering the better podcasts that aren't exactly what about the independent podcasts that people are doing? Are people listening to that? There was also an article in mashed.com as we go outside a cafe anyway, where we bring you Mike's Daily Podcast somewhere in Podcastro Valley 10 today, the last place on earth. Amazon is shoppers' go-to stop for nearly everything, even groceries. Last year, the online store surpassed other favorite retailers like Walmart and Costco to be named America's preferred grocery store. NJ.com attributes that to shoppers' desire to stay safe during the pandemic. But with shipping delays sweeping the country and CNBC saying they probably won't clear up anytime soon, demand on all online retailers has increased. There is a TikTok user, presumably an Amazon employee, who's encouraging customers not to purchase their groceries from Amazon. Sorting the packages, the Amazon employee has the text over the video reading, a little advice from an Amazon employee, please stop buying beverages or food products from Amazon. Clarifying that there isn't anything wrong with the food. Rather, they're alleging that there's a problem with the devices that package it, stating that when these machines malfunction, the food products spill, further breaking the other machines and also damaging other packages. Okay. So there's nothing wrong with the food? Okay. But it's causing problems. One commenter expressed their frustration with the concept, writing, well, my mom depends on Amazon. I don't know what to tell her. Reiterating their issue is with the robotic packagers. If you are disabled or just rely on Amazon, if it's possible, please get your groceries from another online grocery shopping thing. Man, it's ridiculous. Thank you, TikToker. This is why I'm not on TikTok. This is why Andy Samberg said, no, I'm not going to go on TikTok. I'm too old to be on TikTok. TikTok is for just kids. And once you get to be adults, drop the TikTok. Get rid of it if you can. Now, it's a Chinese company, isn't it? Once you've spent a couple years with TikTok, I'm sure they will have their hook so far into you. They will know everything about you. They are going to just be pulling all kinds of money out of you years from now. So just don't even start. Don't even be in TikTok. Should you be in any social media? Probably not. If you're not paying for the service, then you are where they're getting the money. You are the product. And they're making money off of you. All right, that was fascinating, wasn't it? Hey, how do you know, speaking of people using you, don't be in a relationship where you're being used. There is an interesting article about, what is this? From Insider. The Insider.com or Insider.com. 9 signs someone is using you in a relationship. The conversation's always about them. They always let you pick up the check. Thank you very much. You always have to come to their rescue. They never say thank you. They're always asking for favors. You start to resent them. Oh, that's when I know I'm being used. If you're always the one catering to them, you might notice that you start to feel a bit of resentment. You feel resentful, which is only natural, but it can be an additional indicator that they're actually using you. The resentment can come along with one-sided relationships. If the two are equally invested, no person should feel resentful. Your emotional needs are never considered, let alone met. They never make you feel appreciated. Your family or your friends have concerns about the relationship. Maybe they've said to you. That's another possibility, that you are being used in your relationship and you should get out of it. Outside, speaking of out, we're outside a cafe anyway, somewhere in Podcastro Valley. Look who's here.
Well, Mike Matthews, it's Chely Shoehart. I stay away from people that use me, Mike Matthews.
Like they might try and use you to, get some of the wonderful products that you have in your gift shop for free. Do you have any groceries?
No, Mike Matthews, I get all that from Amazon.
You shouldn't, because apparently it does something that is bad, according to a TikToker that's completely unuseful TikTok. This is the type of news we get from TikTok, by the way.
Mike Matthews, I love TikTok.
Oh, no. Look who else is here. Oh, Mike, this is Floyd the Floorman. And this is John Deere, the engineer. Mike is in TikTok, one of the characters from a Frank Baum book. Oh, that's right. One of those Oz books, one of those Oz characters was named TikTok. They actually had that in that weird Disney movie back in. Isn't it weird? So MGM, huge studio, did The Wizard of Oz. And then years later, Disney did a different type of, like a Journey Back or Return to Oz. Was that what that was? That had like updated special effects and was kind of scary. And yeah. And then years later, there was the Disney MGM Studios, the theme park, which that's no longer in existence. It's now just like a Hollywood Studios or something. They dropped the MGM. What a strange connection that was made right here outside a cafe anyway, somewhere in Podcastro Valley. But next show, Podcastro Valley 10, it will be the wonderful Benita, the Disgruntled Fiddle Player, and the Brewmaster. Chime in about anything that we covered out here. 336mm daily. 3 plus 3 equals 6mm as in Mike Matthews daily, as in what this podcast tries to be. Doesn't always happen because life gets in the way. I've been hearing now that the Omicron is less dangerous than the flu. Wow. interesting headlines every day. Lets us know that life is an interesting thing. Life is interesting. Just in case you didn't know. Okay, taking us out is A-Frame.
Mike's Daily Podcast is written and produced and performed by Mike Matthews. His podcast is super easy to find. Download or listen to his show and read his blog at mikesdailypodcast.com. Email Mike now at mikesdailypodcast@gmail.com. See you tomorrow. Bye!
Oh, and you know what? I forgot to tell you. If it is Sunday and it's between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. Pacific time, tune in to the radio station that I'm on, playing some upbeat, fun, memorable music at, well, there's a link at mikesdailypodcast.com.